Alright, so in our previous tutorial I showed you how to start off by unwrapping your arcade machine here. So what I'm going to start off by doing is I'm going to go ahead and move this cluster right over here for now, and we'll come back to that at a later time. So like we said in the last tutorial, if you look at each one of these objects here, they're stretched or squashed, they're not the right size or shape, and that's going to affect our mapping. So what we want to do is we want to go up here to our checker pattern, and we want to go ahead and turn that on. So if you navigate around your arcade machine here, you're going to see that a lot of our checkers are stretched or squashed and they aren't perfect squares. So we're going to scale them so they are. So what I want to do is, if you go into your UVW editor here, you're going to see a select and move, select and rotate, and select and scale. If you click and hold on the select and scale, you're going to have a select and uniform scale. You can scale on the horizontal plane or on the vertical plane. So for this one, I want to scale on the vertical plane. So I am going to actually bring this out to about here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just until we can see our checker pattern starting to come up as nice squares. That looks good. Let's go over and do the same thing on this side. Alright, that looks pretty good right there. We can go ahead and select these. And these are pretty squashed, so I'm going to go to my vertical scale tool here. That looks good. Let's go over here. Do the same thing. Alright. That looks pretty good. And then finally, let's go to our top plate here. Let's scale that as well. Fabulous. So like I said, they don't need to be perfect, but they should be squared enough and relatively consistent with each other. So that's a good place to start. So what we want to do now is we actually want to compact all of the stuff right into a small square here. So I'm going to go to my select and move tool, and I'm just going to start moving some things here as close together as possible, making sure I don't disrupt any of my UVs. So let's just go ahead and line this up. And I'll select my two, actually, let me scroll in here and do a little bit better job of this. I just want to make sure that these are not overlapping, but they can be pretty darn close. Alright, so I'm going to select all of these. Let's drag this over to the corner here. And then I'm going to reset my pivot. So instead of having my pivot point in the center here, I'm going to bring it over to this bottom left corner. So if I click and hold and go to my bottom left, you'll see my pivot point changes. And I can go to my select and uniform scale tool, and I can scale these all down, just like that. So now I want, I want to make sure that these, my two sides here, take up as much of our space as possible. This is kind of the main event. But I do also want to make sure that the rest of this stuff is able to fit in there without any problem. So let's go ahead and scale this down just a tad. And I think we should be okay with that. Great. Okay. So it's pretty much a puzzle piece game. If you're working with more complicated UVs, then you might need to do a little bit more tweaking, but figure out what works best for you. Alright, so now what I want to do is, I know that I want to keep all of these together, so I'm going to select these, and then I'm going to go over in my editor here, I'm going to scroll down to group. So I'm going to group selected. So when I go ahead and I fit everything else in here, it's going to keep all of these pieces together. So there we go. That's all selected. So the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to select all of these, and I want to go over here to arrange elements. And what that's going to allow me to do is I'm going to pack custom so they can all fit right into this area. So let's go ahead and click that. Oops. Let's make sure I also have this selected. It will keep all of this together as well. And as you can see, that's fitting in there pretty decently. Now, I am not a huge fan of how that looks, so let's see if I can do a little bit more tweaking here. I'm going to try scaling these up a little bit. Let's go ahead and change our pivot point one more time. Okay, just like that. And now let's try that one more time. Alright, so I don't know if that's much better, but at least we can see the main pieces that we're going to be working with here. So we have our joystick panel, we have our two front panels here. Awesome. So what I want to do next is I'm going to go ahead and save out this image here. So I can go to, where are we? Where do I want to go? So we're going to flatten mapping, mapping, flatten mapping. And we're going to go ahead and just say, actually pause that for 1 second. Alright, sorry about that. So we're going to go up here to Tools, we're going to get on to Render UVW Template, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bump up some of my values here. So instead of a 1024 pixel size, let's do 2048 in the width and height. And we will go ahead and say Render UV Template. And it looks kind of funny, but if you zoom in, you'll see that it's much higher quality. So we'll be working with this area down here, and you'll be good to go. So I want you to save this into your folder. So you're going to go up here to Save Image. You can call it Arcade UVW. Oops. Come back. And do not save it as a JPEG. You want to make sure that it is it's transparent. So we're going to save it as a PNG file. So save it as a PNG in your folder, say Save, and go ahead and say OK. And in the next lesson, I'll show you how to take this into Photoshop and work with the rest of your materials.